From Izzy's previous rivals like Robert Whittaker to the GOAT of the UFC, almost everyone has weighed in on the upcoming Adesanya versus Pereira fight. The fun part's there's no common ground and opinions about who's looking like the favorite. But hey, that's to be expected when there's such a massive fight. The battle's a big one for the UFC as a whole, as well as for these two competitors. Not only is it Adesanya's opportunity to avenge his loss following his shocking knockout at UFC 281, but it's also Pereira's chance to demonstrate that his last victory wasn't an exception. Of course, the majority of people would immediately claim that he was fortunate to TKO the last stylebender unexpectedly, yet as you recall, he did go up 3-0 against Israel after that victory. The key idea is that these two have a lot at stake. It's about their pride and their legacies now more than it is about the title or keeping a record. And believe me, you don't want to mess with somebody who's defending their honor. Nonetheless, the remainder of the UFC 287 undercard is also rather, I don't know the word, insane, you can say? I mean, come on. It has Masvidal versus Burns as the co-main event. But let's stick with the main event since the two will undoubtedly get into some psychological warfare beforehand. Adesanya, for one, believes that despite previously losing 3 times, he's simply too good for the other guy, and he'll use the whole fluke thing to influence Pereira so that he begins to question his skills. Yet the Brazilian knows he has what it takes to defeat the last stylebender, only if it was that simple. But nothing seems to be stopping him since he is heading into this battle on a 4-fight win streak. Oh, maybe except for one thing, the betting odds. Indeed, the Brazilian isn't looking like the favorite to defend his middleweight title to the UFC GOAT. He has positive 130 odds going into the fight, while Adesanya is the clear favorite going into the fight at negative 155. But what isn't possible in this sport? These two are by far the finest fighters of their weight class, and quite frankly, they know their hurdles. But personally, I think Israel will carry on performing his greatest work, and it involves circling the octagon in search of a gap until he has devised a fresh plan to eliminate the Brazilian, that is. I get what you're thinking, but why would you use the same approach that caused you to lose matches in the past? You'd be correct to believe so, but you have to play to your strengths. Plus, Izzy didn't do anything wrong in the previous fight. He was simply unfortunate. Perhaps Lady Luck will be on his side now. Nevertheless, speaking about siding with Adesanya, he has the battle under control, according to Khamzat Chimaev. In fact, he's so certain that Israel would win that he declared it to be the simplest battle of his career.
Darce choke, wait for it.
That's it, Mike, he's got it.
That's it. The tap. Khamzat Chimaev by submission, and he stays undefeated with an absolutely outstanding debut.
Oh man, for a guy that's young in his career to go out there and get that kind of a finish, fantastic.
I'm not sure about that one, to be honest. Nonetheless, Boris is right when he says that Pereira has little to no wrestling skills. Adesanya will easily defeat the Brazilian if he can include grappling into his training. To be honest, this is very sound advice because including wrestling might give Adesanya the advantage against Pereira. Oh, and Chimaev isn't the only man who believes Israel has a good chance at winning this match. For instance, Whittaker claimed that it all hinges on Israel's reaction to the most recent defeat. He has every right to defeat the Brazilian if he has managed to avoid letting it affect him and is still training hard. According to the fighter, if you look at the fight from a mental perspective, Adesanya has a better chance this time. But more than that, Rob even predicted that on April 8th, we could possibly see a wilder and more free Adesanya. Why? Because the worst has already happened. Though at the same time, he did mention that if Adesanya worries too much about the worst case scenario happening, then things might not look up for him. Nevertheless, the South African fighter Dricus du Plessis has more than one reason to support Adesanya. For him, Izzy enters the fight with nothing to lose. As in, it's more like if this is the last thing he does, he might as well just win. Though the South African also said that he wasn't sure if Adesanya's got that hunger to fight back after losing 3 times already. But guess what? There's no need to even think about it any longer. Everyone who questions Adesanya's hunger has heard from him directly. Well, when he spoke to the media, he appeared to be quite upset about everyone attempting to discredit him. He said that he had never felt uninspired to take on Pereira, yet he's placing additional pressure on himself to perform extraordinarily in this battle. He said that people can keep saying things they want to say, but he has no doubt he is gonna beat the Brazilian. Oh, and he added that he doesn't care about the other guy's win streak against him, and that winning here was only gonna be about Israel taking back his kingdom. What's more, whether you believe he'll win or not, you can't disagree that he now exudes a lot of confidence, and it can only be a good thing for the battle. In hindsight, there are also others who believe Pereira will defeat him for the 4th time in a row. One person who was particularly harsh with his forecast was none other than our heavyweight champion. Jon Jones stated that the last stylebender has no hope of winning the fight, no matter how often he attacks Pereira. At the UFC 285 press conference, Jon also discussed how Pereira puts in a lot of effort, in which he supports him. Jones added that he believes the Brazilian was gonna do it again. On top of that, Marvin Vettori echoed similar sentiments. He continued by asserting that Izzy could not defeat Poitin, though he did slip in his own ambition, stating that he would love to face any of these two men next. Vettori has already lost against Adesanya twice, so he must have a very high opinion for Alex for him to predict this result. But in an interview with MMA Junkie's Mike Bond, Sean Strickland just trash-talked the stylebender in his prediction. He stated that he anticipates Adesanya to outpoint Pereira and dance about like a little even if that's somewhat harsh, at least he's supporting Izzy in this situation, right? Well, sort of. But it appears that he was just upset over being defeated by Pereira back in July of last year. In reality, he said that Adesanya will make things more equal despite the Brazilian's enormous reach advantage over him. But what does Pereira think about his chances in light of all of this? Well, it comes as no surprise that he is supporting himself here. Yet I found what he stated to be rather intriguing. Alex disclosed a secret to Super Ludus in an interview that he hadn't before shared. He claimed that out of his 28 amateur matches, 25 of them were won via knockout. The other 3, Pereira said that he lost to the same opponent, and he never understood why. He said that even though that fighter doesn't compete anymore, he'd still beat Alex anytime. According to the Brazilian, if he faced that opponent 10 times precisely, he would still lose each encounter. And for him, Adesanya's circumstance is quite comparable. Consequently, no matter how many times Izzy attacks him, he will always lose because, once more, Alex already understands him. But again, no one knows what can happen when it comes to this sport. I have a feeling it's gonna be different this time around. Having said that, this was all for the UFC World predicting Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira at UFC 287.